This isn't quite as in depth, probably as some of the other ones. This is just some of the touching the surface stuff I did a few years ago. Um, on classified domain completely, open source. Um, but just to give the cadets that I was responsible for training and educating some insight into Russia, and ultimately letting them know that Russia it's always been the bad guy, right? Like the end of the Cold War did not mean that Russia was no longer the bear. Um, if those of you old enough to remember Mikhail Gorbachev, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact, the breakup of the Soviet Union, and the kind of mess that was. Remember this big gregarious character, Boris Yeltsin, right? Boris Yeltsin comes in, becomes the president of the new free liberal democracy Russia. Well, yeah, that didn't work out so well, right? Um, as we start to get into the late 1990s, towards the end of Yeltsin's terms in office, we got that young punk Vladimir Lenin, or Vladimir Lenin, that dude dead. Putin, Vladimir Putin, right? It becomes the mayor of St. Petersburg, right? So that's where I got Lenin from, Leningrad, right? Um, so it, becomes the mayor St. Petersburg. So what does Putin do while he's the mayor? How does he become mayor? Well, he starts to consolidate power and make guarantees and deals with the oligarchs, right? And who are the oligarchs? Well, they're the people who seized control of sectors of the Soviet economy when it ceased to be government, right? Um, when the Soviet Union collapsed, right? The government-owned businesses, industry. These are guys who seized the opportunity and became the oil baron, the steel magnate, and took control of those industries that were formerly controlled by the communist government of the Soviet Union. Um, so Putin is able to combine their power, gets him in the office, and ultimately several years later he's in charge of all of Russia. Um, and Putin himself, as many know, career KGB officer up through the end of the Cold War. At the During the fall of the Berlin Wall, uh, Putin was in Berlin, right? He was the field agent in Berlin in East Germany. And if you know about East Germany, it was probably the most brutal and authoritarian communist government in Central and Eastern Europe. Right, East Germany was just nasty. If you want to look at the work of the Stasi, right, the state police in East Germany, and what they did, the information, the control of people, of ideas, siblings informing on siblings, husband and wife informing on each other, parents informing on their children, children informing on their parents. It was just awful. That's the reality of East Germany. While Putin was in charge of the office there for the KGB at the end of the Cold War, at the fall of the Berlin Wall, right? So fast forward your early 21st centuries, president, premier, prime minister of Russia, right? He's flowed back and forth between a couple of those titles. Um, but ultimately, for the past 22 years, Vladimir Putin has been in control, in charge of Russia. So what I don't want people to do is underestimate Russia. Do not underestimate Putin. That's one of the greatest things to me is he is an incredible leader. He's incredibly intelligent. He's a professional spy who's had a second career, as a professional strategic leader. Um, Understands people, understands manipulation, understands deception, information operations, understands how to convince others to employ them on his behalf. Right? I put a bunch of links in here because what I did is I took students through the war in Ukraine, the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula by Russia, as well as in Syria, right? Because we were fighting a proxy war, United States and Russia in Syria, whether people want to admit it or not. Um, we were deploying some of our high end aerial assets, um, and Russia deployed their high end, brand new integrated air defense network. Right. So guess what Russia has? They got the signature on everything we have now, right? So they know what it looks like inside of their radar system, right? So, while we weren't direct conflict with Russia, that's the kind of proxy that was happening. Using Syria, Syrian rebels, ISIS, whoever's backing who at any given time, and who that's irrelevant for this. What is relevant is Russia forward deployed, brand new IAD system, and the United States forward deployed, brand new fifth generation fighters and, and new stealth technology in unmanned aerial systems. Right, and Russia got the picture of that. That's an important takeaway for me out of Syria. All right. I said Putin's the world's greatest spy. All right, there he is. All right, this is Red Square, Moscow. Right, so I'm pretty certain our intelligence knew that here's President Ronald Reagan. I'm pretty certain they knew this wasn't just your average Muscovite looking for a photo op with the President of the United States. They knew who that was, right? We're not idiots. He's not an idiot. He knows that we know that he knows that we know. Everyone know who's who in the zoo. Uh, Regardless, there's in the mid 1980s at the height of glasnost, there is Vladimir Putin and a photo op with the President of the United States. Right. Great spy. If you wrote his biography, it would probably read a lot like a Tom Clancy novel. It would be pretty good read. Right. Right. This video is how Putin got to where he is today. Right. How he got into power. Talk a little bit about Russian hybrid warfare. But this is all born out of experience, observation. Figure two, Russia's had since September 11th, 2001, really to look at exactly how the United States has operated militarily in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in East Africa, in Syria. If you go back to the 90s, they've seen us working in Kosovo and Bosnia, right? They've seen our peacekeeping operations. They've seen our high end. They've seen our counterinsurgency, right? So what was Russia going to do? They're going to account for all of that and how they apply force, right? They understand the American news cycle. They understand the average American psyche. That the average American doesn't have patience. Americans don't have tolerance for high casualties in combat, right? And there's a need for instant or quick gratification in American society. And they also understand our addiction to media, right? And fake news. All right, Russia's, they do. They're in your social media feed. All right, they're in there. Russia's there. The crap and the garbage you see, a lot of that is your Russian friends putting stuff into your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Right? China's there too. Right? They're very good at this. Right? Because they understand that the main battle space is here. It's the mind. Right? So they're going to dominate with information, psychological operations. Right? And they're going to win the battle space of the mind. They understand how that plays out because the leader is a spy, and he's an expert at mind control, at influencing others. He's exceptional. All right. So right there, morally and psychologically depress the civil population. It's easier to do than to the military population, right? But we're very addicted to our fake news cycle, and Russia's going to exploit that. They already exploit it every day. How many times have you opened up one of your social medias and you got friend or follower or request, from some smoking hot girl who you don't know, and she's sending you a friend request and pictures or whatever. Guess what, dude? That ain't your girl. That's Putin. All right? Delete that crap. Block them. All right? You ain't cool. You ain't attractive. Right? That's Russia getting access to the battle space of your mind. Okay? So don't fall for that trap. Right? Russian leaders are military leaders. All of them. Politicians, police. Right? They think strategic. They think big picture. Right? And they don't think about instant gratification. Right? They love the low end covert state involvement. We do too, right? It's cleaner. It's less mess. There's less mess, right? When special operations go in and takes care of something, right? But that's how Russia got into Crimea, right? Was on the low end, using special operations, soft, right? And they start to build up some kind of insurgency, and then they can justify a direct military intervention to protect lives and resources, blah blah blah, right? It works, right? We do the same thing. It's not a secret, okay? Right? But they're not afraid of high-end military involvement. We're more hesitant to apply high-end military power, right? But Russia, we've seen it. They've already done it in Crimea. They've done it in Chechnya, Belarus. They've been doing it in Belarus the past couple of years, and now they've been able to move divisions into Belarus and posture to the border with Ukraine at this point, right? So they'll use soft, get something festering, and find a justification for conventional military involvement. Right? Subversion, where I talked about this: fake elections, fake news, fake media, spoofing, fake accounts, bots, hackers. They've got it all, and they're really good at it. Right? I already mentioned their integrated air defense system, the IADS. They employed it in Syria. It's up in Ukraine. It's humming. Right? So they'll have a good air picture. Right? And they have a pretty good idea of what our 4.5 and fifth generation aircraft look like. They got it. They got it. Right? Electronic warfare. I talked in a previous video. They have EW capabilities: ground-based, air-based, maritime based, right? They can jam, intercept, hack, shut down, denial service. Um, they've got the full range of EW capabilities, and they'll use them. All right, and they also may just let everything flow, right, and watch. They'll watch data packets flow, and we saw this previously. Russia, they'll use data packet flow and geotags as an observer plan for artillery for indirect fire, right? So they're really good at their EW um, and some of their subversive methods to gain a kinetic advantage. Um, they've done it before; they'll do it again. They're very good at it. All right. Russia still has a nuclear threat. They're still nuclear, right? They're still one of the big nuclear powers. Um, and they'll that threat's always there. Whether it's demonstration, a parade in Moscow with a giant missile, strategic bombers flying close to off the coast of Alaska, um, current exercises they've run in Belarus and the Sea of Azov, right? The threat's there, right? The bear is alive and well. Right? All right, just to give you and just to give you a little sample of how it works, right? This young lady here, Natalia, a handsome young lady, former Ukrainian official, right? But the newly created Autonomous Republic of Crimea, now part of Russia, right? She became the chief prosecutor and started prosecuting all the war criminals. Not Russian, Ukrainian, right? And they did a great job of, the little anime her here. And there were memes and pictures of her, and she was an internet darling. She's the bad guy. She's one of the bad guys. She called Ukrainian officials devils from the ashes. She's the bad guy. But Russia turned it. Right? She's intelligent. She's beautiful. She's the package. She's a strategic leader. She's a member of the Russian Duma, right? Their parliament. She's the bad guy. But we didn't but the international community didn't treat her like the bad guy, right? Because Russia was subversive in marketing Natalia and marketed her to you, right? And you fell in love. Right? 5 elements of Russia's next generation warfare. This is how they do it, right? We've hit on this. Political subversion, proxy sanctuary, intervention, coercive deterrence, and negotiated manipulation. That's a fun one. So that's some Russia there. In about 20 minutes. That's kind of how they operate, right? And I ain't going we didn't talk specifics of the employment of the BTG and the mechanized or motorized infantry battalion, right? We ain't talk about that. We're talking some high end stuff, um, and how they think and how they treat um, combat warfare in the 21st century. They're experts. They're really good at it. Pay attention to what they're doing. Right? They're in your phone right now. Not actively, passively, but they're there. All right. So how do you receive information? How do you process information? And ultimately make decisions based on what's in your news feed. Right? And social media is not news. There are aspects of news in social media. There's 10% truth in there. There's 90% bullshit, propaganda, garbage, right? So how are you receiving information, processing it, separating the shit from the shinola, right? So some things to think about, given world events and where I think we're headed in the next 48 hours. Um, and we'll see what happens. You know, ultimately it'd be great if this is just a big show of force and a flex of muscle. I don't think it is. I think it's going to be a demonstration of muscle and might, and, and a lot of people are going to get hurt. But there's 21 plus minutes of Putin, current Russian strategy, all open source, all unclassified, open source domain. You can Google that stuff, find it, and as always, I do not currently work for, speak on behalf of the United States Department of Defense, NATO, the United States Army. Just my own stupid brain saying things that make sense to me, and trying to keep this at a relatively layman level, to enable decision making and understanding of the global situation right now in southeastern Europe and west central Asia. What is it? Right. But a lot of things happening, a lot of pieces moving, and not looking really good. All right. So that's it.